God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
All right, mission number 1 accomplished. I got on the stage without falling. Mission number 2 will be to not experience vertigo and fall off the stage. No, seriously, very first thing is always, how many of y'all have heard me speak before? Raise your hand. Okay, for those of y'all who have never heard me speak before, there's something that I do that you won't hear too many other elected officials do. And it's this. It doesn't matter where I'm speaking. It doesn't matter whether I'm speaking in front of folks at a church or folks at a business meeting. The very first thing I always do is I thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Because He is the reason why I'm here. And whether anyone believes it or not, He's the reason why you're here. He's the reason why we are living in this blessed and prosperous land, while we have this abundance of food, and abundance of possession, and the freedoms that we have come from Him. And so I give Him thanks first and foremost whenever I speak, because it is His strength that I do it through. So we do that first and foremost, give Him that thanks. I also want to thank the folks who invited me here. I certainly appreciate it, and it's wonderful to see all you great men out there together for the purposes of lifting up the name of Jesus Christ. So thank you all for inviting me. Now, although that was a wonderful introduction, I have to make a few corrections. Correction number 1, I only spent 6 years in the Army Reserves. It was very uneventful. They told me I was a 91, 810, but oftentimes I felt like the backup joke teller. So that's number 1. Number 2, I have 2 grandchildren. I have a little boy who is about to turn 5, and he's smarter than I am. The last time I had a conversation with my grandson, it was about the Parthenon in Greece. Yeah. And I have a granddaughter who's about to turn 2, who is now speaking in full sentences and is asking for all types of, what do you call that, couture or whatever that is, all that dressy stuff. Yeah, she's already asking for that stuff. So she's well on her way to being a diva like her mom and her grandma. So I have 2 grandchildren. And then the last correction I have is that I did not serve on the city council in Greensboro. I actually went down and stomped on the city council in Greensboro. So those are the corrections I have to make to that introduction. That was sort of my claim to fame. I went down there and I jumped up and down on top of the city council for 4 minutes. But thank you for that wonderful introduction. And nonetheless, thank you so much. So guys, here's what I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm going to talk to you about me, and I'm going to talk to you about the road that I walked in coming to know Jesus Christ. So as you heard, I grew up, my mom had 10 children. Now here's the lucky thing about that for me. By the time I came along, most of them were grown and gone. So I only had to contend with 4 of us, not 9 of us. Couple of interesting facts about me. Number 1, I have 2 sisters that I've never seen, never laid eyes on. One of them I know has passed away. The other one, we have no idea where she is. You see, my mom had a very strange life. very strained life. She had a very hard life. Much of it is a mystery to me because unfortunately I was so preoccupied with the life that we were living. I never asked my mom about the life that she lived before I came along. It never really mattered to me. The only thing that mattered to me is that I knew my brothers and sisters, and I loved my brothers and sisters, and I loved my mom and dad. That's the only thing that mattered to me. All the rest had passed. It was water under the bridge, and it didn't matter to me at that time. But as I get older, I often wonder the struggles that my mom had, the struggles that my father faced, and I never found out, and I've always regretted that ever since. But I have those two sisters that I never met, don't know it, and one of them I don't know where they are. The other interesting fact about me is this. I was born in 1968. Anybody want to guess when my dad was born? Just give me a number. I was born in 68, so when do you think my dad was born? Somebody shoot me a number. We heard all kind of stuff, but nobody would say the actual date, which was in 1897. Yeah, we have documents to say that my dad was born in 1897. That would make him 71 when I was born. I can back that up with you because I only knew my father as a retired person. The time I came along, my dad was old and retired. And that's what I knew him as, an old gray-haired person who was retired. He died in 1979 at the age of 88, I guess, 89 maybe. But yeah, he was 71 when I was born. I tell people all the time, God does not make that model anymore. He pulled that one off the assembly line. But yeah, I certainly had a very contentious growing up. My father was, I won't call him an alcoholic, but he was a weekend drunk, and he would get very violent with my mom. My mom and him had a very strange relationship. They had a very violent relationship, and we witnessed a lot of domestic violence in our house. We did not live in the typical American house. Or maybe in some cases, as I'm learning now, maybe we did. Because as I've traveled the state and the nation, I've talked to people who have heard my story, and they say, hey, I grew up just like you. You know, we weren't poor, we had money, but my father was still an alcoholic, or my mother was a drug addict, or, you know, so many people shared a common thread of having difficulties in their family. No matter the socioeconomic means that you may live in, we all share the same problems. We all live the same types of lives. So I've learned that my family wasn't all too different than many other families, although at the time it felt like it. Felt very separated from society because of our poverty and the things that were happening in our home. But here's the thing. The first bit of normalcy that I ever found in life did not come from school, where many people find their first piece of normalcy. Many people, their refuge is the schoolhouse. My refuge did not come first from the schoolhouse. My refuge came first from the church. My father would not let my mother go to church because my father was, as we discussed, much older than my mom. He was a very jealous man. And he wanted to keep my mom close to him and would not allow her to go anywhere out of her purview, his purview. So she was not allowed to go to church, but he allowed her to dress us up and send us to church. And that's exactly what my mom would do. She would dress us up and send me and my younger sister off with my older brothers and sisters, and we go off and we go to church. And when I went to church, a little church right down the street from my house, it actually wasn't a little church, it was a pretty big church called St. Stephen United Church of Christ. That was the place where I first saw normalcy in my life, where I saw men who had good jobs and good careers and dressed nice and didn't drink, and people that I could look up to and aspire to be like and say, hey, I want to be like him. That's who I want to be like. The first men that I saw in my life who served as role models to me, unfortunately, were the men in the church. And I say unfortunately because it should have been my father, but it was not. That void in my life that my father left in my life because of his circumstances. And again, I don't begrudge my father because of his circumstances. My father came up in a different time and a different place. And if I had to guess, I would say that my father was a rather tortured person because my father was very intelligent. But he lived at a time where, unfortunately, in this nation, his intelligence didn't mean as much as his skin color did. And so I suspect that he was very tortured because of that. But my mom, in her wisdom, she knew where to send us to find the right role models. And the first role models I saw were at church. And I could almost name those folks by name now. I can remember their faces vividly. I remember as a small child standing watching those church men and thinking, man, when I get grown, I'm going to be just like that. I'm going to be tall and strong and educated, and I'm going to wear nice clothes, and I'm going to be nice to my wife, and I'm going to have a good job, and I'm going to make an impact in my community and in the lives of my family. I'm going to be just like that. And I consider that to be a blessing. And that little church, St. Stephen's United Church of Christ, served as the absolute, it was my refuge. As I said, school was not the place where I found refuge. School for me was almost a minor annoyance for a while there, until I got in some later grades. But every Sunday I look forward to getting up going to church, every Sunday. You know, it was something that I loved. But here's the funny thing about it. Now, I went to St. Stephen's Church my entire young life. All the way up through high school, I went to St. Stephen's Church. But you know, I got baptized in that church. I gave speeches in that church. I had people in that church who were encouraging me to be better in life. People who knew, told me that there was something special about me. Some of those people are gone on now. Many of them are gone now. But told me that I was special and told me that I could do great things. But here's the thing in that church that never happened. I never got saved. No one ever sat down and had a conversation with me about salvation, about how it works, about what the words being saved meant. To me, being saved was being rescued from Gilligan's Island. You know, being saved was a fireman coming to get you out of a second-story building that was on fire. I did not understand the concept of having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, although I grew up in the church. Now, some people might say that's sad commentary for that church. I just believe it was just part of God's plan. God was not ready yet for me to become saved. Because as I've learned since then, everything is done. If you believe in Him, everything is done on His time, not yours. No matter how bad you want it, no matter how much you might think it ought to go that way. It's not your time, it's His time. And my time was not to get saved while I was in that church. I had other lessons to learn in that place before I got saved. Now let me tell you the story about how I got saved. So, you know, when you get to be 17, 18 years old, you join the Army and you go off, you go to basic training, you go to AIT and you buy your own car, especially when you're a man, you think you're grown. Let me describe you as what I thought. When I thought I was grown, I'm going to describe myself to you. So, I was 17, 18 years old. I had about a 32-inch waist. Can you believe that? I looked at my Army pants that I wore and I thought, my God, what G.I. Joe had these on? But I had a 32-inch waist. And I had 19 and a half inch arms. I did. And was in the gym 3 hours a day working on that other half inch so I could clean 20. I had a head full of wavy black hair that was cut into a high top fade. Oh. My favorite civilian clothes to wear were blue jeans, t-shirts, tight t-shirts, and cowboy boots. And here's the kicker. I had a Camaro. Now, just let your mind wander there with those images, what kind of person I was. Needless to say, I was not going to church at St. Stephen's every Sunday. I was not living the life that God would have me to lead. I was doing things I shouldn't have been done, going places I shouldn't have been going, and hanging with folks I had no business being around. But I had a best friend named Wayne Campbell. He had been my best friend since 4th grade. One Saturday, Wayne called me and said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "Saturday night, what do you think I'm going to do?" You know, I'm thinking, 32-inch waist, 19-inch arms, wavy hair, Camaro. What am I going to be doing on Saturday night? I said, why? He said, because I want you to come to the student union at A&T, which is the college there, one of the colleges there in our town. He said, I want you to come to church with me at the student union. Church on a Saturday night. You know, I'm thinking in my mind, Saturday night is for sinning. Sunday morning is for repenting. Isn't that how it goes? I said, I don't know about that. What are you going to have church at the college for? And he said, you got to hear this preacher. I'm telling you, you got to hear this preacher. Come on down with me. So I shoot him off the phone and I told him, all right, yeah, I'll go. I shoot him off the phone. I thought, I'll get out of the house and get gone before he calls me again. Didn't happen. He called me again later that evening and implored me to come to church with him. You see, Wayne had already gotten saved. And Wayne didn't do like a lot of us when we get saved. Wayne started taking a look around him saying, you know, who else do I know that needs to be saved? Who else do I need to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to? And see, Wayne Campbell was a real friend. Because Wayne Campbell thought of me when he thought of that. And he called me on that Saturday, invited me down because he knew that God was lining it up for him to lead me to Christ. Anyway, I relented and I went to that student union. And I don't remember who the preacher was that night. I don't even remember what he preached about. Couldn't tell you who else was there beside me and Wayne Campbell. But I know when I came out of that meeting, when I came out of that church service, something was different inside of me. I gave my life to Christ that night, and something was different inside of me. I felt different. I started thinking different. Now, I can go ahead and tell you, I'm not one of them that just snapped to like Wayne did. See, because when Wayne got saved, that was it. He hit the ground running. Although I knew I was saved and I knew I started feeling different and started thinking different, I had a giant sack of wild oats, and I still needed to sow them. So while God was tapping me on the shoulder and whispering in my ear, I was one of them knuckleheads who wouldn't relent, who wouldn't listen, who wouldn't be obedient, and wouldn't answer his call. And so what I decided to do was this, what many people do. What somebody in here, quite honestly, might be doing right now. I was walking with one foot on one side of the fence and one foot on the other side of the fence, straddling the fence. Sundays, I was at church, cleaned up, wearing a suit, talking about Jesus. But on Monday morning, I was back out raising Hades and acting the same way I always had been. Nothing had changed Monday through Friday. Sunday was the day reserved when I would give the day to God. But I had not yet given my life completely to Him. Although He never let go of me and never turned His back on me. And you know, that's the amazing thing about it. He gave His Son to save my soul, and I told Him in a church service that I was His, committed myself to Him as a saved person, and still refused to be obedient to Him. And He did not turn His back on me. All the mistakes that I made, all the pitfalls that I fell into, and there were a lot of them, folks. See, people look at me now, and what they see now is they see cake. Yeah. They see a great big old chocolate cake with frosting. And what do you call it, little hard candy sprinkles on top of it? That's what they see. But see, they don't see all the ingredients that went into this. They don't see the hard work that went into this. They don't see the 2 or 3 times where 2 or 3 layers got burned and had to get thrown away and other layers had to get made to replace them. They don't see all the things that went wrong in my life because I was disobedient to God. And I make no bones about it. Every mistake that I ever made in my life was because I refused to be obedient to God. every struggle that I had in life was because I would not walk fully with him, because I still wanted to walk with one foot on the other, one side and one foot with him. And so for many years in life, I struggled. But as I continue to struggle, I continue to get more and more serious and realize, hey, you got to get serious about walking with God. You can't be a Sunday Christian, or just a Saturday and Sunday Christian, or just a Friday and Saturday and Sunday Christian. You can't be a daytime Christian. You got to be an all-the-time Christian. When that little tap on your shoulder comes and tells you you're doing wrong, you got to respond immediately and repent immediately. In your quiet times of reflection, you have to not think about what other folks have done wrong and what other people are doing wrong. In your quiet times of reflection, you need to take that one finger that you point at everybody else and look at them other three and realize that three of them are pointing back at you. See, because Christianity is indeed a finger-pointing religion, but the finger is supposed to be pointed at you. You should get in that mirror and point at yourself. And that's what I began to do. And I began to realize something. I began to realize that there would be no success in my life if I did not put God first. Amen. And so I began to ask the question. I began to ask this question. I began to ask the question, what can I do for God? And I started thinking about it. I started thinking about what I like and what I don't like. And I said, well, I like teaching. And every place, every job that I've always been on, I ended up instructing and teaching. So I think what I'm going to do for God is I'm going to go to school, I'm going to become a teacher, and that's what I'm going to do for God. I'm going to teach children, and that way I can serve God at the same time, and that's what I'm going to do for God. And so I went off and I went to school and started studying to be a history professor, and I had all these grand plans laid in front of me about what I was going to do for God, being a history professor, and molding young, impressionable minds in the classroom, and being able to, use my abilities to touch young people in a way that could affect their souls. And I was sitting in bed one day, and it came to me. You're asking the wrong question. You are asking the wrong question. The question that you should be asking is not what I can do for God. The question should be, what does God want you to do for him? How many of y'all were in the Army? Raise your hand if you were in the Army. Army, Marines, any of them. Service. If you're in the service, raise your hand. Thank you for your service, first off. But let me ask you a question. When you went off the boot camp or basic airman's camp or whatever they call that in the Boy Scouts or Air Force or whatever you call it, I always got to take a dig at the Air Force because I'm jealous because y'all got all the good food. But when you got out of training, did you get to write your own orders?
No way.
No, you don't get to write your own orders, because if it let you write your own orders, the entire United States Army would have been in Hawaii. And all of them would have put their job titles down as beach bum. You don't get to write your own orders. Uncle Sam don't let you write your own orders. You sign on that dotted line, and then you wait for your orders. And then you get them and you carry them out. And the same thing is true with God. You don't write your own orders with God. That's right. You're on his time, not your own. And it's his mission, not yours. You are to carry out what he wants you to carry out. And so, having thought that and come to that realization, I got up and I went into the bathroom that moment. And I looked in the mirror and I said, God, I don't know what it is you want me to do for you. Whatever it is, I'll do it. I don't care if you want me to get my Bible and go downtown Greensboro and preach at the traffic that's passing by and be that crazy old guy with the Bible that's preaching to the passing traffic. If that's what you want me to do, I'll do it. I don't care if you want me to go down here to the drug house, preach to the drug addicts and the prostitutes. I'll do it. I don't care if you want me to pack up everything I own and move overseas and go preach to people who have never heard the word in the name of Jesus Christ. I'll do it. Whatever you want with me, do as you see fit. I'm yours. I'm no longer on my own mission. You see, it's like that when you're a kid. You know, I was in school making all these grand plans. You know, when you're a kid and you got all your toys in the floor, you got your trucks and your crane and all your bulldozer. In your mind, you are building a great empire. You're building a great city. You're doing great things. But to your parents, you're just playing. And when it's time for you to go, they tell you, clean that up and let's go. God did the same thing with me. He saw me making all them plans to be a professor and all that. But when it was time for me to do what he wanted me to do, he said, look here, son, put all that away. I got something else I want for you to do. And it's time for you to step out and do what I have created you to do. Not what you want to do, what I have created you to do. And so it wasn't too long after that I got up one morning and the Greensboro City Council said they were going to try to cancel the gun show I was going to go to and buy that AR-15. Y'all know the rest of the story. I got mad, went down there and gave them the what for, and my life has not been the same since. My life took a complete turn. I went in a complete different direction than where I thought I was going. And I have done things since then that I would have never imagined that I would ever do. Never would have imagined that I would ever do. I never would have thought that I would have run for office, much less one as big as my mouth is. My God. Politicians with mouths that big never win. But I've truly learned something on the walk that I've been on, and that's this. I am not walking under my own power. This is not a journey that I planned. This is a journey that I relented to because I trust God and I trust His plan. People ask me all the time, what's next for you? I don't know. I don't know any more than those of you who all the way in the military didn't know where your next orders were going to be. I have no idea what's next, but I know this. Whatever it is part of God's plan, and it's going to be a good place. No matter what struggles I might face, what obstacles might come in front of me, I know that I'm doing it and I'm not alone. Wherever I get led, I know it's a place that God led me to. As long as I continue to do as my mom always told me. My mom always told me this. If you put your hand in God's hand, where He leads you to will always be a good place. And there are no worries. So you see, I tend not to worry. I have people that work for me that worry all the time. Matter of fact, every time I open my mouth, they get a little nervous. I've never once been nervous in the position that I stand in. Whether I was facing some political opposition or whether I was facing the news media, I've never been nervous, never been afraid. See, because there's nothing on earth that man has created that can cause me fear. Why? Because the greatest thing you can have, we have it on our side. Which is why I don't understand why there's so many cowardly men on this earth. Many of whom claim to believe in God. How can you be a coward and claim to believe in God? The most powerful force in the universe is on your side. And you remain silent on the critical issues of the day. You sit silent while babies are slaughtered in abortion clinics. You sit silent while our children are abused in schools. You sit silent while police officers are spat upon and treated like criminals. You sit silently while our veterans come home and are treated like trash. See, God doesn't want you to be the tail. He wants you to be the head. And I'm going to say this and I'm going to say it plain, and if anybody doesn't like it, just go ahead and get mad at me. Women are not supposed to be leading the charge in our churches. It's supposed to be men that are supposed to be leading the charge. And that's something that came straight from my mama. My mama told me when I got married, she sat me down and told me, she said, 2 things you need to do. You need to make sure you lead your family to church, and you need to make sure you don't let that woman henpeck you. She didn't make no bones about it, because she was from a different school. She was from a school where men led. And that's my message for you today. And that's why I've told you the story that I'm telling you today. Because each one of you all need to know that if you are a believer in God and you have committed yourself to him through Jesus Christ, you have nothing to fear. Stand up and lead like the men that he has created you to be. Lead your families, lead your communities. Be what God has intended you to be, because if you put your hand in his hand, he will always lead you down the right path and lead you in the right direction. Stand in confidence in that and believe. I learned that lesson. I learned that lesson in spades. And I'm learning it more and more every day. And I hope that you do too as well. Thank you all for being here. God bless this church, and God bless the great state of North Carolina. Thank you.